Are you a fan of avocados? I'm sure many of you are. Whether it's smoothly spread over a perfectly toasted slice of bread or mashed into a rich guacamole and scooped up generously with tortilla chips. Thanks to its incredible versatility that blends naturally with almost any dish, it has become an absolute staple, not only on your everyday dinner tables, but especially here in Texas, where it's simply indispensable. But hold on a second, did you know this is actually a fruit? It lacks any natural sweetness whatsoever, and with its rich, buttery texture, you'd be forgiven for mistaking it for a vegetable, perhaps something akin to a squash or a pumpkin. Surprisingly, however, the avocado belongs to the fruit family, just like apples, peaches, and pears. In fact, botanically speaking, it's actually closely related to cinnamon and bay leaves. To put things into perspective, a whole avocado contains a mere 0.4 grams of sugar. On the flip side, it packs around 30 grams of fat, making it one of the quintessential fatty fruits, alongside olives and oil palms. But unlike the oil palm, which is the source of palm oil, the avocado fat consists mostly of unsaturated fatty acids, much like olive oil. This type of fat actually benefits the body, aiding in the absorption of various essential vitamins. Furthermore, while olives and oil palms must be pressed and processed into oil, an avocado can simply be sliced open and eaten right off the rind. When you look at it this way, it truly seems like a wonderfully benevolent fruit. Yet right here in the Americas, this very same avocado is costing human lives and driving severe environmental destruction. When did humanity first start eating avocados, and how exactly does a simple fruit end up killing people and destroying the environment? Join us here at Flat Archive as we dive into the dark truth behind the avocado. Let's start by diving into a fundamental question. Why do fruits exist in the first place? Were they created just to fatten up animals? No! Their true purpose is to spread their seeds far and wide. When animals eat the flesh, they either scatter the seeds or swallow and excrete them, carrying those seeds to distant locations in the process. That's exactly why fruits are sweet and delicious. But the avocado is a bit of an anomaly. We could accept its nutty, savory flavor instead of sweetness as a unique differentiation strategy, but the seed is exceptionally large compared to the overall fruit. It's nearly impossible to swallow whole, let alone casually scatter. The problem lies in the avocado's place of origin, the tropical rainforests of Central and South America, stretching roughly from Mexico to northern Peru. As it turns out, there are virtually no creatures in this region capable of swallowing a seed of this magnitude. Of course, wild avocados, before being domesticated, were much smaller than they are today. However, the seed took up much of a larger proportion of the fruit, leaving barely anything to eat and making it incredibly awkward to swallow. Furthermore, avocados contain a compound known as persin. It's highly concentrated in the skin and the seed, and ingesting large amounts of it can lead to respiratory distress, heart failure, and even death. Therefore, to smaller native animals in Central and South America, like parrots or guinea pigs, it's essentially poison. The seed takes up more than half the fruit, there's barely any flesh to enjoy, and you have to risk your life just to eat it. Naturally, it was treated as an undesirable fruit in the wild, leaving it at a massive disadvantage for reproduction. A very small number of bird species immune to persin, such as the quetzal, did help spread the wild avocado, but this was nowhere near enough to guarantee the survival of the species. So what exactly gave the avocado the audacity to evolve this way? The truth is, the avocado is entirely blameless. Originally, the Americas were home to an abundance of megafauna, massive animals weighing in the tons that could casually ignore the toxicity of persin, swallow avocados whole, and excrete the seeds. But roughly 13,000 years ago, a new player arrived on the scene, a walking natural disaster: modern humans. Humans who had crossed the Bering Strait eventually made their way down to Central America, and armed with lethal spears, they hunted these massive animals to the point of extinction. In the fallout, the avocado suddenly lost its distribution partners for seed dispersal, pushing the fruit itself to the brink of extinction. You could say that by choosing such a highly specialized evolutionary strategy, it became incredibly vulnerable to the natural disaster that was humanity. Yet, ironically enough, the very reason the avocado ultimately avoided extinction was none other than humans. The same modern humans who had wiped out the giant herbivores decided to taste this avocado, and finding it so incredibly delicious, they simply began to cultivate and grow it themselves. At this point, you might be wondering, wait, wasn't it toxic? I thought only giant animals could eat it. By a stroke of sheer luck, this toxic compound known as persin wasn't particularly lethal to humans. As fate would have it, our human bodies possess a remarkable ability to detoxify persin. Furthermore, human nature dictates that we peel the skin and remove the seed, consuming only the fleshy part where persin levels are lowest. Consequently, the exposure was so minuscule it posed zero threat to the human body. In fact, the toxicity of persin turned out to be an advantage, providing the plant with natural immunity against certain pests and ensuring that smaller wild animals wouldn't dare steal the crop. Moreover, because it is ultimately a fruit that grows on trees, early humans didn't need to engage in massive deforestation or search for vast plains just to farm it. They could simply cultivate a reliable supply by propagating more avocado trees in nearby forests. This made the initial difficulty of domesticating the avocado remarkably low. Because of this, recent evidence even suggests that in ancient times, the avocado was domesticated in the Americas before corn. Above all, the avocado paired exceptionally well with other crops native to Central America. In a region devoid of large domesticated animals for dairy or a separate source of cooking oil, it served as a vital dietary staple, perfectly supplying the fat that was otherwise lacking in the indigenous diet. Because of this, the avocado was treated as a highly significant crop in later eras, such as during the Mayan civilization and the Aztec Empire, cultivated on a massive scale alongside corn, beans, and squash. Even today's name, avocado, traces its roots back to ahuacatl, the original term used by the Aztecs. In the 16th century, Spanish conquerors, the conquistadors, transcribed ahuacatl as aguacate. This later made its way into the English language, gradually morphing into the avocado we know today. Guacamole, that rich dip we scoop up with tortilla chips, is also a historic dish that predates the arrival of the conquistadors. Originally called ahuacamole, literally meaning ahuacatl sauce, the name evolved as it was adopted into Spanish. However, unlike other New World crops, such as corn, potatoes, and tomatoes, the avocado didn't spread to the outside world for quite a long time, remaining a local Central American specialty. From a climatic standpoint, Europe simply wasn't suitable for its cultivation. Furthermore, with excellent alternatives like butter and olive oil readily available, there was no pressing need to attempt growing it. They did try planting it in other colonies with similar climates, but again, since other sources of oil were sufficient, it offered little practical utility. Another factor was that among the indigenous peoples, the avocado was considered a kind of aphrodisiac. This is presumably because the shape of an avocado, well, strongly resembles the male anatomy. In fact, in the Nahuatl language, the word ahuacatl directly translated to testicle. Of course, in its native Central America, people continued to consume it enthusiastically regardless of these associations. If anything, thanks to the introduction of Old World ingredients like lime, cumin, and garlic, avocado recipes evolved to become even more diverse. Even within the confines of the Americas, its footprint actually expanded. Following the expansion of Spanish colonial territories, avocado cultivation began in South America, south of Peru, a region that had previously been geographically isolated from the fruit. However, in this region, rather than aguate, the name palta, originally used by the Incas, became the standard term. Then, in 1833, the avocado finally made its way to what is now the United States. It began to be cultivated on a small scale in warmer regions like Florida, California, and Hawaii. However, up until this point, the avocado had almost no public recognition within the U.S. and was largely treated as a regional food consumed only by Mexican immigrants in the Southwest. At the time, even its English name wasn't standardized. It was most commonly called the alligator pear due to its resemblance to the reptile's bumpy skin. Because of this bizarre name, people couldn't even imagine what it tasted like, and it inadvertently developed a rather unappetizing negative image. In 1914, domestic growers successfully lobbied to ban the import of Mexican avocados. The following year, they officially changed the English name from alligator pear to avocado, going all out to boost the domestic sales of American-grown avocados. These measures proved quite effective, and by the early 20th century, the avocado gradually began to gain popularity across America. However, with the ban on foreign imports still in place, prices were exceedingly high, making it a rare luxury fruit largely reserved for the upper class. It's a bit ironic considering it was an everyday staple for anyone in Central and South America, yet in the US it had become a fruit for the elite. Then came the 1970s, when the Hass variety, the very kind we eat today, established itself as the dominant cultivar, leading to a massive drop in avocado prices. At the time, they cost just 25 cents each. Even when adjusted for inflation, that means you could buy one for roughly $2 in today's money. Fueled by this price drop, the avocado finally made its way onto the dinner tables of the American middle class, and thanks to the growing population of Mexican immigrants, it began to deeply penetrate working-class households as well. The turning point came in 1992 when California avocado growers launched a massive promotional campaign sharing guacamole recipes perfectly timed for the Super Bowl, America's biggest sporting event. This strategy hit the bullseye, firmly cementing the avocado's status as the essential food for Super Bowl Sunday and party gatherings. On top of this, the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, was signed in 1994. As trade barriers between the U.S. and Mexico rapidly came down, the ban on Mexican avocados was lifted in 1997, causing a massive influx of the fruit to flood the market. With both demand and supply exploding simultaneously, the avocado successfully integrated itself into the everyday American diet. Furthermore, since the 2000s, as public interest in unsaturated fats grew, it was perfectly positioned as a leading health food, causing consumption to skyrocket even further. This was how the highly positive superfood image of the avocado we know today was ultimately forged. Today, the avocado has evolved into a massively popular fruit, consumed not just in the Americas and Europe, but across the globe. Not only is it a staple in our own diets, but with markets across the Pacific like Japan and more recently China falling for its flavor, the trajectory of future demand is expected to climb even steeper. In fact, since 2013, global avocado consumption has increased by 7% every year. It is currently experiencing such explosive growth that an astonishing 10 million tons are consumed annually. But the real issue here is that this very avocado is causing severe environmental destruction. Because the avocado's popularity is so sky-high, countries throughout Central and South America are ruthlessly clearing precious rainforests, all scrambling to plant more of it. Some of you might be thinking, well, isn't that the case with other crops too? Surely it's still better than large-scale livestock farming, right? But the real trap is that a significant portion of the land being cleared or plowed up for avocados consists of arid or semi-arid regions. By nature, the avocado is an incredibly water-intensive crop. However, because it fetches such a high price on the market, growers will plant it as long as the temperature is right, regardless of water availability. As a result, local groundwater and water resources are utterly depleted. In fact, in California, once the epicenter of American avocado production, cultivation areas are actually shrinking due to severe droughts and skyrocketing water costs. Down in Chile, South America, rivers have completely dried up because avocado farms have monopolized the water sources. This has led to tragic situations where local residents lack basic drinking water and are forced to survive on water deliveries by truck twice a week. While advancements in agricultural techniques are slowly improving things, there is still no fundamental solution in sight. Even more horrifying is the fact that in Mexico, the avocado's very birthplace, people are literally dying because of this fruit. This is because Mexico's infamous drug cartels have expanded their reach into avocado farming as a side business. Cartel members are extorting profits directly from avocado farms, and in some cases, they are violently threatening farmers to seize their entire orchards. With kidnappings and murders occurring in the process, it's a literal life-or-death situation. Things have gotten so bad that farmers have formed their own vigilante groups to stand armed guard over their crops. Given the massive demand and high market value of the avocado, it has essentially become a cash crop, equivalent to green gold on the ground in Mexico. From the cartel's perspective, relying solely on the drug trade carries too much risk. Therefore, since the 2000s, they've been expanding their footprint into the legitimate agricultural business. And among all crops, the avocado, being the most guaranteed moneymaker, inevitably became their primary target. Of course, this doesn't mean we should immediately boycott avocados and stop eating them altogether. As mentioned earlier, efforts are underway to mitigate the water consumption issue through advancements in agricultural technology. And fundamentally speaking, the avocado plant itself is not the primary cause of cartel violence. Above all, the avocado has already become an indispensable ingredient, not just in tropical producing nations, but across major countries worldwide, completely integrated into our daily lives. Like coffee, chocolate, and bananas, we've already discovered its charm, meaning there is simply no turning back now. In fact, in the US, the avocado serves as an iconic food representing the younger generation. The first generation to grow up eating avocados regularly from a young age in America is roughly the demographic currently in their 30s and 40s, widely known as millennials. They are quite literally the generation that enjoys avocado toast on a daily basis. However, since avocados aren't exactly a cheap fruit even in the US, they often become the subject of generational conflict. When older Americans, specifically the baby boomers, lecture them by saying, "If you'd saved the money you spend on avocado toast every day, you'd have bought a house by now," the younger generation fires back asking, "Do you have any idea how insane housing prices are these days?" This kind of back and forth tension has practically become a standard internet meme in America. Here at Flat Archive, most of our team members are in their mid-20s to early 30s, falling into what is known as Gen Z. Even though there's a slight age gap between us and the millennials at the center of the avocado meme, we absolutely love avocados ourselves. But truth be told, eating them frequently still feels like a bit of a financial burden. Therefore, we hope that avocado varieties and farming methods can become more environmentally friendly, and that the tyranny of the cartels will eventually disappear, so that in the future we can all enjoy avocados more affordably and with peace of mind. This has been Flat Archive. Thank you for watching.